This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Okay, here we go. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, all right. Thank you for joining the Purpose Driven Sobriety podcast. My name is Christine, and I'm an alcoholic. I would like to thank today's sponsor, Miss Tiffany D. She is a dear friend of mine here in the Waco area. She's in the program, and she is amazing and supports all the things that we're doing, the nutso things that we're doing as far as this podcast and stuff goes. But Tiffany, thank you so much. I love you, sister. Well, today we have on Miss Nicole. How are you, ma'am?
You know, I'm pretty fantastic.
Hey, well, you know what? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Nicole and I ran into each other, I think we have a mutual friend, Miss Rachel, and which I met Rachel through, which she's got the sobriety page, Addict with Purpose. Which is, she's just doing amazing things she's just a phenomenal warrior for recovery. So I think she was our connection, and I'm so glad that she made that connection. So on the show, Nicole, we just basically tell what it was like, what happened, and what we're like now, just to reach that person who still suffers. You know, we have to keep telling our stories, so that we can help others out of that darkness. So without further ado, tell me all the things about Miss Nicole.
Oh goodness. Well, thank you for having me. And thank you to Rachel. A little shout out to Rachel.
Yes.
She is the warrior. I'm super glad I've come in contact with her, and what I'm about to tell you is going to lead me into how I met Rachel on what I'm doing today. So Nicole is from Chicago, Illinois. I grew up in, actually the burbs. Just kind of a middle class neighborhood. I have two parents. They're still together. They've been married, well, gosh, now 42 years. It was just a really it was a great neighborhood to grow up in. I grew up on a block that you could play tag in the middle of the night, and all the parents knew where everybody's kids were, and everybody was watching out for everyone, and it was really cool. As a child, I was very precocious. I had big feelings. I didn't have words for them, but I had big feelings, and I come from a background that's more subdued in your feelings and things like that. So, I think my poor parents, I really gave them a run for their money. My addiction really began when I was a child. I was really sensitive to like loud noises, textures, things like that, and how I found comfort was food. My mom tells me as young as like 3 years old, and this is super embarrassing, but I would go for the Kraft singles in the fridge and go and hide in my room and eat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and Kraft singles are disgusting. Like, I'm sorry, Kraft.
As a child, they're not, though.
Like 3 times. I don't know if that's allowed, but they're not great. I've my cheese, my palate for cheese has definitely improved
over the years.
Then. Yeah. I love you, Kraft. You do other things.
That's right.
Anyway, so you know, that was my comfort, you know, when I didn't have the words, or folks didn't have the words to give me, or know how to deal with me. I hid and I eat, and that's how I changed my thought pattern. So growing up, I did okay in school. I was like one of those middle of the road kids that did very well in school, but not well enough to like, I didn't try hard enough to be on honor roll. Um, there were a few times they tried to, um, well, let me just say, I had a hard time paying attention. And, but I was smart. I didn't have a learning disability, but they still thought that, if I possibly went with the ADD diagnosis, that I might do better. And my mom was really adamant about me not taking medication. So that is, I'm not going to state my opinion on that. That's neither here nor there, but I've just had a little bit of a struggle when it comes to keeping things all together because I feel all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so around like 12 to 13, I started experimenting with marijuana. Um, and I wanted to do the most. I wanted to get as high as I could. I wanted to escape as far as I could. Um, and I also found it like kind of a gateway to making friends. So, as kids are changing and growing into different groups and activities and stuff, and I really still didn't find a way to fit in. I fit in with marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I continued on that route. I tried a lot of things as far as like extracurricular activities, but I just had never any follow through. I get hyper focused on something and do really, really well with it. And then something would distract me and I would just, my confidence, I would lose confidence in it. And I went to hair school in high school. I went to school for medical assisting. I didn't finish that, uh, but I did well while I was in it. So probably at the end of high school, well, I'll go back. Sorry, at 15 years old, um, I was not comfortable in my home because of my feelings and my poor parents, like I said, didn't know how to relate to me. Um, I was trying every different genre to be about. It was either like 1 minute I was goth, 1 minute I was, jock, 1 minute I was that. And I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. I'm really trying to
No,
stay
you're fine.
linear with
You're
the
fine.
story. Um, um, they just didn't understand it and they didn't agree with it. One occasion, like I said, I was smoking marijuana at the time. On one occasion, my mom found my stash and she went in my room and she was so frustrated with it and her way of coping with her fear, which what I believe it was, is to break all my CDs and tear down all my posters and throw them all out of the room and tell me how disgusting and what a shame I was to the family. And so that sent a real clear message to me that it wasn't safe to talk to my parents about drug use.
Mm.
Um,
Now, were you an only
and then,
child?
oh no, I have an older brother. He's 2.5 years older than I am,
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
and he was doing all these things too. He just got away with
He
them.
was just better at it.
Yeah, he was just better at hiding it, right? So, yeah. So, and the parents are different with girls than they are
Yes, they
boys.
are. Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is. I get it, and they just didn't have the experience with what I needed. So that's how they reacted. And so I rebelled. I did everything I could to not be home. Um, I got a job. I worked as, I got a work permit at 15. Um, and then my one summer, the summer that I was 14, my uncle, so I'm going back a year, my uncle and aunt, they needed a babysitter for the summer. And they said, if Nikki could just come stay, with us that would be helpful instead of us getting up with her, and getting her earlier in the morning. So I did. I went and stayed with them. Well, um, my aunt was probably only about 7 or 8 years older than me. She's younger than my uncle. So, I mean, she was early 20s. And, she was more like a pal than an aunt. Um, she wasn't much of a drinker or anything, but, there were occasions where they'd buy some wine coolers and we'd all sit and drink. And she went to bed really early. Well, then my uncle, he stayed up and I'd sit and drink with them. And I just thought it was, you know, the feeling that I got, the psychic change that I received from alcohol, was magic.
Mm.
It's like, this is what I was looking for my whole life, to feel comfortable in my skin. I could sit and talk, I could tell big stories, I could, I didn't feel like I sounded stupid anymore, you know. So like I ran with that. Well, one night he brought around some cocaine. And, I'd seen Pulp Fiction. I was like, oh, that looked like that looked like a good time. In addition to alcohol, like, why not? If he's doing it, it must be good. So I used cocaine with him. And we would do it like every night. It would be every other night, and then it became every night. And he started making me feel uncomfortable at one point, and being inappropriate. Um, and I would just like quickly try and like get his attention off of me and say, "Hey, let's do some more cocaine."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where we went with that, and he did molest me, um, and it was I didn't know how to feel about it because, I mean, now I have words for it, but at the time I wanted to do the cocaine. I didn't want to go home. I wanted to drink, and I couldn't do any of that at home. But I rationalized it was a small price to pay for having the drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could just disassociate, which the drugs and alcohol surely
Right.
helped me do that. Um, I didn't have to think about it. I would just enjoy my high and my drunk, and just pretend it didn't happen in the morning. And if I drank enough, I could blot it out.
Blackout. Yeah.
Right. So the summer ended. I get home. I never told my mom about it, any of it, because years prior, my uncle had done this to um his sister-in-law, his wife's younger sister. And they all put a lot of shame and blame on her and said, well, they were doing drugs together and she wanted it. And God, I'm not going to say anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, I get back home, and so we start school back up. I'm in high school. I start German class, with the promise of going to Germany. And I did pretty well. At one point, we could sell chocolates, little advent calendars to raise money. So I did. I sold a ton of them. Well, then the German teacher retired, and we were no longer going to Germany. So I chose to take that money and buy cocaine from my uncle. And I got my friend to do it. And I remember we were in the bathroom of the high school, and we're doing it, and we go back to class. Well, she got called to her counselor's office, and her father was a drug addict, and she broke down in front of her counselor and told her counselor that um, she had used, and then I had also used. And so they come look for me. Well, Nicole's in the bathroom again. and and luckily, well, I mean, I got rid of it before I got caught, and that was my first foray with rehab and in meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 15 at this time, 15 or 16. And when my mom and dad found out about it, they were furious. Um, and confused and scared. So the school recommended I either go to IOP or I get expelled. So I went to IOP. My parents didn't have a whole lot of money, so it was very, very costly for them. In addition to that, I started going to 12-step meetings. And uh, the feeling that I got from sitting at that table, of course, it was nerve wracking at first. But to see a group of adults being so vulnerable and honest about how they really, really felt was totally new to me.
Man, and you were just a baby going in there.
I
They had
was
to
a
be
baby.
like, golly, you probably had to think that they were ancient people sitting around you.
I did. Well, I don't know if that light's any better.
Was there
It's
was
fine.
there anyone even near your age when you went in there?
There were a few people that were.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but not many. And here I am. I thought I was cool, the coolest kid in town. I'm sitting at a table of adults smoking cigarettes because you could back then
Mm-hmm.
at the table,
Oh my
drinking
goodness.
the strongest coffee in the world. Tell them
Jet
my
fuel.
15-year-old problems.
Oh my gosh.
And they listened and they didn't judge. They didn't make me feel small. They didn't make me feel like my problems were not real or important. Um, that was the first sense that I had that, and my recovery is 12 step base. We'll get there. Um, but that was my first entrance into the rooms, and I got a sponsor, and I worked through a few steps. Um, and then I think I don't know why I just kind of stopped going. I drifted away from it. And I moved on, but that addict brain didn't stop. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the psychic change had not happened at that point, as we like to say in 12 step.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. So I got through high school. I had some good jobs right out of high school. I worked for United Airlines. Can I say these brand names and
I think
stuff?
you're fine. Yeah, I think you're fine.
Okay, I don't work there anymore.
I think you're fine.
So, I was a reservations agent, and it was going pretty well. But the company changed while I was working. That the early 2000s, and a lot of things were happening. 9/11 had just happened. The
Mm.
world was weird. You know, it was a very confusing time. I had friends going off to war in Iraq and Afghanistan and dying. I graduated in 2003, so that was right there, right then. And I drank a lot. I mean, I was a binge drinker. Very clearly early on. I mean, I didn't drink every day, but when I did drink, I drank to, I mean, oblivion. Um, and I was always looking for that next high, that next party. All my friendships were very surface level, all party based.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had no ambition to go on to college or anything. Mostly because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I would be able to finish, because history of not finishing things I start. So I just worked. And then let's see, so in 2005, I got hooked up with my son's father. We had grown up together. Um, we knew each other, like I said, our whole lives. And we started dating, and we weren't careful, and I got pregnant. And he decided he wasn't ready to do the parent thing when I was about 8 months pregnant. But we still keep in contact. So I raised my son pretty much on my own, well, with the help of my parents. My parents always lived within a mile of me. My mom was like my second parent. So I should not say I parented him alone in his early years. That's not true. My mom was right there. Um, so like I got hyper focused on being, I was terrified of being a parent. Um, but I got hyper focused on doing that and trying to do all the right things. I was so afraid I'd screw up, you know, his early life that I chose not to breastfeed because felt for sure there was something wrong with me that I would pass it on to my child if I hadn't already passed on whatever, through biologically just by him being my son. So anyhow, he was born in 2007. I just put my nose to the grindstone and worked. I dated when he was about 2 years old a guy that it was super toxic. He left a lady that he had just had a child with and should have, we were just hooking up, and he decided he wanted to come live with me, and I was so sick, and I said yes. So him and I, that was a short-term thing. At one point, my brother moved in with me. My brother has a long history of drug addiction, alcoholism. Also, um, he was using, and he was living with his in-laws and crashed a vehicle of theirs. And instead of, I should be telling his business, but he probably won't watch this. Instead of taking consequences, he decided to run away to my house. Anyhow, so chaos, just chaos all over. And then the boyfriend and I were doing cocaine. So that got brought back into my life, and with a 2-year-old child. Um, it was just not good. He did end up leaving me, and which was for the better. And then my brother ended up taking off too shortly after moving in with me as well. So I was back to my son and I, still not knowing how to manage my feelings, my stress, um, not feeling like my feelings were valid. I didn't think to go back into the rooms at the time. At all. It was just, in my mind, I'd cured it. I put out the fire of that emergency, and now it was there. So I didn't need AA anymore, or another 12-step fellowship. So, go on to like 2015. I purchased my own home. Um, I was back to binge drinking when I drank. Met a neighbor. She introduced me. Let me back up. After one night of drinking, I asked her if we could get some cocaine, and she brought me some crack. So we did that, and that led on to a year of that and hiding that, mostly unsuccessfully, from my family. Had a short rehab stint. And then I got out, met a guy who I thought was the love of my life in AA within like a couple of months of being sober. That was not happily ever after, as you could imagine. So we relapsed together, and one pivotal point of that story was, we had relapsed. I asked him to leave. He left, under the guise of me quitting. And, we can't see each other because we're both addicts. I kept using. And I I'll never forget one night, and I was working. One night, I spent one whole paycheck on drugs, and I let an unsavory character into my house where my son was sleeping. Um, in the morning when I was still up, um, I thought, well, if I take a shower, maybe I'll feel better and well enough to drive him to school. So I took a shower, and it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I just took the money that I earned that was to take care of my son, and I smoked it. It's gone. I just betrayed my child. And so I said to God, I said, God, should I keep going or should I kill myself? Should this be it? Because life was just extremely unmanageable. I didn't I didn't know how to be in the world. I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. I would It was hard. I love my son and I took excellent care of him. We had roof over our head. I always had food. He was, but I was not, for years, even up to before the drug use, I could not be present for him.
Mm.
I would read him a story and I couldn't wait for it to be over and for him to go to sleep. And it had nothing to do with him. It was just me being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt shame about that. And all I wanted to do was, I wanted to end the night either, in oblivion of watching TV or eating something, or, you know, I couldn't wait just to turn the day off and the feelings off. Um, so I took my son to school that morning and I drove myself over. I didn't hear God, but I ran through the tape of what it might look like for my son's future if I wasn't around anymore. So maybe I did hear God.
Mm.
Just didn't realize it at the time. So I get over to rehab. I spent 3 days. I really couldn't. Rehabs were really like 30-day stints were really hard to find in Illinois. So all I need to do was to go to the psych board for a few days. And I did, and I got out, and I started attending AA again. Still didn't get a sponsor, still didn't do anything that they recommended. Um, and I stayed as long as the emergency and the crisis felt fresh in me.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it did, that went away, I kind of fell off again.
Right.
So, jump to 2016, we decide to move to Nashville, which is where we're at now. My son's like 9. I was still sober up to that point. Um, Huge change for us, it's just a different life down here. And my son is away from his whole support network. Um, we do have my aunt and uncle here, so that was cool. And he did end up making some friends, and the area that we moved to in Nashville just turned out to be a huge blessing for him. He just thrived in the school there. He had, it was a little higher socioeconomic class of folks, and 2-parent homes and a lot of structure compared to where we're from, which is not that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that is important. So anyhow, in my opinion, he did really well. And um, see, 2000, let's see, what was it? 2019, we get a call from my mom. Well, my mom had been having some leg pain. Um, And I talk to my mom like every day throughout this whole thing. Throughout my whole life, really, I call my mom every day. Hey, how's it going? Whatever. When we lived in Chicago, she would stop in quite often. She worked in the neighborhood. Um, like I said, she was my son's second parent.
Mm-hmm.
I get a call from her after she had had this leg pain, saying that she had stage 4 cancer. And all I could think was, who am I without her? I didn't trust my feelings. I didn't trust my place in the world. She was my, she was the person that I touched base with on everything. Who am I if she doesn't make it? So I threw myself into exercise, which is not a bad coping skill, with my aunt. Um, and then at the end of the year in December of 2019, they had a benefit for her. Her work did. It was very apparent that she would never return to work. And they had an open for me bar, because I was part of her family. And I had a friend that had a bag of cocaine. Yeah. So that weekend while I was there for her benefit, I was just, I was not present. I was drunk or high the whole time. My mom she'd always been, I mean, we're not small people, but she had wasted away to like nothing. She was so sick, and I didn't know how to handle it. And my dad and my brother weren't doing well emotionally either. And it was just hard. And my mom didn't want to talk about it. My dad, nobody wanted to talk about it, how we were feeling. So I escaped. I said, fine, we're not going to talk about it. I didn't make that conscious decision then.
Mm-hmm.
I just was going to get drunk. So I remember that Christmas, I was supposed to fly out that Christmas day to come back home. And I was still drunk and high that morning. I didn't sleep I didn't sleep at all on the trip. And my mom wanted to do gifts together. And I just, I was a crab. I was a jerk. Um, it was not cool. And I couldn't tell anybody what was going on with me. So get on the plane, go back home. I didn't have any access to anything here besides the alcohol. Um, and at that time, I said, "Well, I'm a social drinker. I don't drink by myself."
Mm-hmm.
But when I do socially, I binge. I never admitted that part. So I started drinking. I started drinking heavily when I got back home. I started having panic attacks, and I remember driving down the highway, and here you drive down the highway to get everywhere. I felt like my arms and legs were giving out on me, and I was going to pass out. I didn't know what it was. I'm going to the hospital, find them just anxiety. And then I remember what made me feel better. And at the time, I was working as a in a restaurant in the kitchen. And I'm like, oh, light bulb. There's always drugs in kitchens. So, not to give anybody clues. Anyway, um, so I looked for the cocaine and I found it, and back using. My addiction and my alcoholism just flared and went full fledged. So, um, but it was expensive, and I didn't have that kind of money to be blowing on drugs and alcohol. So I thought, well, I've quit before. I can do it again. And I tried to do it on my own, and it did not work. at all. Um, I went to a few meetings, and then COVID hit big time, and then I couldn't go to meetings. And then I tried to do a few online, and I felt so alone. And I had told my aunt and uncle about it, but unfortunately, my uncle has heart disease, and they didn't want anyone around, So, and I really didn't have any friends in the town that we were in, um, so I felt very, very isolated. And then, I did what I know works to make me feel better. I used and I drank, in isolation, and you know that yet of, oh, I don't drink on my own changed real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, it just got messy, and it got messy fast. And then at one point, I met somebody. I was being really reckless. I, my supply had kind of dried up from one person that I was getting things from, and I started meeting people online to purchase things from. And I met somebody who had a different substance, and which is methamphetamine,
Mm.
crystal meth. Um, and I started doing that. And the first time I did it, I was like, I had this conscious awareness when I came down off of that drug. This could really ruin my life. This could really damage my brain. This is different from anything I've ever done. It took several days. It took like a week for me to feel sort of normal after the first time of using it. So I swear, I'm like, maybe this one's not for me. Well, um,
How long did that
I
last?
decided, yeah, like 2 weeks.
Okay, I thought you were getting there.
Yeah, yeah, it was about two
Oh.
weeks, and there was a guy attached to it, and I had a good time with him, and he made me feel good, and I didn't have to think about anything. If I was on that, and I was working, um, I had two jobs at the time, a full time job Monday through Friday, and then the restaurant job on the weekends. I was exhausted all the time. That cured the problem of being exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
From my house was clean, I was losing weight, and people were telling me how good I looked. Um, I was attentive. I felt attractive. You know, um, I thought I had found the perfect thing. And I used that from September, August, and I met a variety of characters. I used mostly at home. Um, my son obviously noticed my strange behavior, not going to sleep, being out all night, um, things like that. Um, in January, and getting kind of paranoid. I was starting to get paranoid. In January, I got a batch that was laced with other things, and on top of sleep deprivation and probably malnutrition and all the things that go along with it, dehydration. I went into psychosis, and I didn't get. My son didn't see me in full blown psychosis. I just didn't go home. I walked around my town. Um, I was seeing things that weren't there. That if you know what psychosis is,
Mm-hmm.
it's intense. What you see, you believe. It's your reality.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, He called a friend. He went and stayed with them. And I had broken my phone. And so he couldn't get a hold of me. Finally, I found out where he was. And my friend had taken him in. And, you know, she knew that I was home. I had made it back home, and she was going to go get my dog and try and get me to go to rehab. She had, by the grace of God, I mean, she was such a wonderful friend. She took my son to school and all this on this particular day that I'm about to tell you about. Um, she took she took him to school. She came to see me and try and talk me to go to rehab, and she called the police because she didn't know what she was going to encounter. So she comes with the police. The police find out that there is a child involved, and DCS gets involved.
So this was 2021.
2021.
Got
yeah.
it. Got it.
Or 20. No, that would be 20. Yeah, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's right. Sorry. So anyhow, DCS gets involved, and they decide that they're going to take my son into custody until they can, until they can determine what forced me to do a drug test. Although I hadn't committed any crimes, they were suspicious of drug use.
Mm-hmm.
So they said either you drug test or we get a court order for a drug test. So they did that, and they took my son. Another miracle occurred. His good friends' parents had been going through foster care training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I dropped dirty, and they took him in. So, and then with my parents being out of state, they couldn't come get him, which I believe is also another blessing. So they had him, and I'd like to say, so I went to the hospital, the psych ward. I spent about 9 days there. I'd like to say when I got out, I stayed sober. I did not. Um, I went to IOP for about a month. Started having supervised visitation, and let me tell you, when you've raised a child on your own, when somebody tells you that you're not a good parent, man,
It's a
and you're
gut
having a
punch,
hard
isn't it?
time, it totally is a gut punch.
Man.
And I gotta the first time I talked to my DCS caseworker, I have to say this. She was a beautiful human. She called me when I was in the psych ward, and she says, Nicole, she goes, you're having a hard time right now. She goes, don't let anybody ever tell you that you're a bad person.
Oh, wow.
You're just having hard. And we're here to help you. And I felt so comforted, but I was still so scared. You hear horror stories about people's children being taken away, and then all of a sudden this paranoia about I'll never get my child back. And then on top of the feelings of feeling inadequate anyway in life. So he's at his friends. I get out. I'm going to IOP. I found a stash I had hidden from myself. I used. Yeah. And I'm glossing over so much because it's just so much. There's so many emotional nights and and just so much heartbreak and confusion during this whole time. And uh, I'm home, and my house is empty, and my son's not there, and I just want to cave in on myself. I don't know what to do. And I felt like I was never going to get out of that nightmare. I felt like I felt so small,
Mm.
and I felt this the powers that be, you know, I had no chance, and I felt like my brain, and also, I mean, my brain is damaged at this point because I'd been doing methamphetamines and I had been malnourished. I
Mm.
wasn't eating, or all that too. So how am I gonna, you know, keep this straight to get through this? I didn't have any ideas, and um so I went to the IOP. I started going to meetings. Um I did not get a sponsor right away. But I stuck around and I kept going. Um but every 30 days I would relapse like clockwork during that first 6 months of my son being in foster. Um I made really good friends with my caseworker and told her when I was available to come drug test. So I kind of figured out
Mm-hmm.
how
How
to
to
get
play the system.
how to play the system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I go and I pass, and my foster mom at one of our court hearings, she remembered that they had suggested that I do a hair follicle test prior to me getting the temporary custody of my son back for our 90-day temporary, whatever
Trial.
they call it,
Yeah. Trial
trial
period.
period.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, I was not happy with her
With her suggestion.
with her suggestion and all. And to be honest, I was high that day. All the court appearances were telehealth, or Zoom,
Right.
so I didn't have to be present for any of them. I wasn't in person. I was still hiding. I felt like I was able to hide behind
Mm-hmm.
what was going on. So when she brought that up, I said, it might be a good time for me to go to rehab. And yeah, that's what I did. I'd like to say that it worked out great and happily ever after, but that's not the story. I got to rehab and it was hard. It was it it was interesting. It was a good program. However, at one point I was challenged to deal with my feelings and my emotions. We had a little, I won't get into too much of it, but I got into a little scuffle, not scuffle, but disagreement with one of my housemates. And I had a counselor say to me, you were very animated in your response to the situation, Nicole. Maybe you shouldn't get your son back.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I told him, I'm going to need a minute. And I walked away. And I came back, or I stood in the hallway, and my therapist said, if you don't come back in this room, we're going to have to discharge you. You need to face this. And I couldn't. I said, if I go back, I'm going to say not nice things. But the reality of somebody saying that because I wasn't being a good parent. I wasn't.
Right.
But but the reality of someone saying that to me, that if I didn't work on my stuff, then your odds, are not great. I couldn't handle it at the time. So I stood in the hallway and they discharged me. Um, and I ended up leaving. I called my lawyer and all that right away, and I got into sober living. Um, and that was a battle. So I got through that. And there was a lot of small trials and tribulations throughout that period, and a lot of growing up. And what's so beautiful is it all of this happened within such a short period of time. I'm so grateful for that. I lost my son in January, and I did have him back by October. So, that's a testament to things can work
Mm-hmm.
if we work on our stuff. But it wasn't easy. So anyhow, he came back home with me. I got in a place, and he came back home with me for the trial period. Things went pretty well. We had gotten so we were living in the sober living owner's apartment that she rented out, my son and I, and she gave us like a 30-day notice, after I had gotten him back for the trial period. She gave us a 30-day notice to vacate because she was going to be turning that into a men's sober living house.
Mm.
So I was like, I know I'd had him for about a month at that point. So I was about a month away from getting full custody back for my son. And I had to look for an apartment with no credit because I had ruined that. I hadn't paid my bills properly when I was using.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly any money. And in a really, really tight rental market in Nashville. The cost of living is just like everywhere. It's pretty high right now. And and then the fact that if I didn't have a stable living situation, I wasn't going to be able to get my son
Right.
back. I was terrified. Um, at this point, I had been going to meetings. I had made some connections. I did have a sponsor. I forgot to mention that.
Okay, that's a big one.
I didn't think. I don't know what I'm thinking.
That's okay. That's
Sorry.
a big one.
There's so much. I'm trying to fit this whole life.
I know.
Crazy experience in a short amount of time. But I did have a sponsor at the time. She was great. Calling her. I started working the steps of my 12-step program. I'm calling her every day. Um, and I'm telling her, gosh, this housing situation's not looking good. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she's like, well, I said, I might as well give up. She's like, well, if you relapse, make sure you come back. I love you. I'm here for you. Come back. And, but she kept with me the whole way. So I get everything. We find a place, through a friend. We get into it, him and I, my son and I. We moved all our belongings into this place ourselves. Um, which next time I'm hiring movers, because no. So we get back in here. We move everything in, and he's miserable. My son's miserable. He didn't want to be out here where we're at. We're in the country now. And he was far away from his friends. He was, 15 at the time. He wasn't driving, so we were about an hour away from where he grew up, basically. And I just wanted to make him happy, and I had this thought, like, I went through all of this to get us back together, and you're going to be miserable. I had huge resentment against him. He had against me. I complained to anybody who would listen about how tired I was and how I didn't want to unpack. And then I went back out. I got him back full time. Our court cases were done, and I relapsed. I felt like, I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to deal with my feelings still. And I decided to use over it. I thought that I needed that to have the energy to be able to unpack and make this house nice for him so he would be happy. I didn't know that my feelings were actually I didn't know that my feelings were actually bringing me down and causing and not working through my stuff and not actually asking people for help instead of just complaining. Um I had no solution. If you don't tell people what's going on and what's wrong,
Right.
you can't work through that. So I relapsed and it was hell. It lasted one day. And the next day I called my sponsor and she had me come over to her house and we sat down and we talked about, what I really wanted. And if I really wanted to get serious about a new way of life. And if I was happy in the way things were going. And we talked about powerlessness and unmanageability. And at that moment, um, I was I was so ashamed walking up to her house, but leaving, I felt so much better. Um, and it was around that time that I decided to start going to church. My friend, my friend, I called her as well, and that I had met in the rooms, and she invited me to this church out by her, and we went, and I felt so comfortable there. And so my new journey, official reentry into recovery, that has led to almost 2 years being sober, coincided with my entry into the church. Yeah. I didn't really grow up religious. There was none of that in the house, so I had no kind of concept of God or anything. Um, so I got to build that in this program that I'm in, and it's been just it's been life changing. It's been amazing. So anyway, now I'm like, sorry, I'm almost 2 years sober. I
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a miracle.
It really is. Um, I've been through my steps several times. I sponsor women. I now work as a peer support professional and help people in the world or my area, not the world. I love to help everyone in the world.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm speaking out to
One person at
manifest.
a time. That's
Um,
right.
one person at a time. Um, so yeah, I cannot believe that I'm here. Um, I Maybe that's not the right words. I could have never imagined what the diligent work and recovery, what gifts would come from it.
Mm.
You know, I just thought I've always felt like whatever other people had, I was not worthy of having.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, going into the rooms and watching people be so joyous and free
And
and
laugh.
serene.
Who laughs? You clearly were not the alcoholic addict that I was if you're laughing. Because there's nothing to laugh about.
Right.
I remember thinking that too, just thinking, and they would be talking about the most bizarre crap, got my hand cut off, wah, ha, 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 and just laugh. And it's like, why are you people, they had joy. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that was.
I didn't either.
All foreign. Yeah, foreign.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. Yeah. So, I found a good group also, what we call a home group, somewhere that I like to go. People know me. They know, if something's going on with me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I isolate, like many others, I isolated a ton in addiction, and so today I can't believe it, but I find so much joy in being around others. I didn't think I'd like to be with s- so many people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How's your son doing?
He's doing really good. Our relationship, it's taken some time,
Sure.
you know, to mend. We've had our ups and downs. He he's dealt with his own mental illness, um, depression mostly, and but we've always been really open about talking about these
Oh,
things
good.
going on with us, right? And you know, I didn't tell him about my relapse at first. Um, I got right back on the horse of recovery, and I just kept going at it. Well, then I noticed, like, it came to the point where I needed to make amends, and um, telling him he was going through a lot and he was very angry, and telling him about what I had done, and saying, and explaining to him, like, it's just, I it's got nothing to do with you, it's got to do with me. You know, he thought that, he's always been an old soul. He thought that, like, my stress was caused from being a parent.
Mm.
Took that on. And so explaining to him that he was not the problem and making amends to him for my wrongs that I had done, and asking for forgiveness, was one of the touchstones of us coming back together as a family.
Mm.
And today, like, through the work that I've done, I'm not uncomfortable as much with being present with him. I mean, I still sometimes have the moment where I just, I get home and I want to just, okay, no stimulation from
Quiet
anybody.
time. Quiet time.
Quiet
Yep.
time.
No, I get it.
But we sit down and we talk. We go for long rides. Car rides have always been our thing. It's a great time to just chat and
Catch
and
up.
be
Well,
catch up.
I love what you said, Nicole, about how you started out where you said your parents, you didn't have the relationship where you could talk to your parents about drugs. And it's like, and now what I hear you saying is that you are being that parent to your son, where it's like, this is part of, because say what you will, the science shows that we got a genetic component to this kid. So there are some odds that you might get this, disease activated at some point in time. Let me share with you what it was like for me, and show that humanity part of you to him, is just beautiful to me.
Yes,
Because they
yes,
they
and
know you, and I love what you said too, because they know and they know something's not right. So if it's
mhm,
left to their sweet little innocent minds to manifest whatever it actually is, and then they start carrying it, just like you said your son did. And so it's
mhm.
just, I think it's beautiful that you are able to unburden him with that, you
Thank
know.
you. Yeah, it is important, and I mean, I don't see him. I want to say one thing is, like, he doesn't have the compulsive behaviors that I have, but um, he did he did start drinking a little bit at one time, and it became like he doesn't have the compulsive behaviors like I do, like with food, which is a whole nother
Mm-hmm.
beast.
Mm-hmm.
But
But it's I
he
tell
did
you what, that beast is in the same damn family, though. It's in the same
it.
family, and I'll tell you, Nicole, and to go off on a tangent real quick, we had it's not that meeting anymore, and I kind of wish it was, but we had a ladies meeting that was all isms, so OA, DA, NA,
Mhm.
AAs, we all came into the same room. And I got to tell you, I got an education on Overeaters Anonymous that I never
Yeah,
imagined. I didn't know. And yeah, honey, that vice is just as around the neck as, ours ever was. Same thing. Same damn thing.
for sure. For sure. It hits, especially sugar. It hits that dopamine and
Mm-hmm.
receptors or whatever. And it fires things up. Um, yeah. Today things are pretty good today. I have a sweet job. You know, I hope I related some information that could like help some people. I'm all over the place. I'm so
You're
sorry.
fine. You're fine. You're doing just fine. You're doing just fine. So tell me, how do you
Yeah.
start your day every day?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I have a ritual that I do that I absolutely love. I have three books that I read, meditation books. One is Journey to the Heart. I think that's uh, Beatty. She does the Codependent No
Mm-hmm.
More.
I love it. Yeah, language. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
language letting go. Yeah, so good. Mm-hmm.
and Jesus Calling, and an AA, either like the daily reflection, and then I journal. I get up about an hour before I really have to, and I sit and I read these things and drink my coffee, and I pray, um, and then get off to work, and then in the evenings I hit up a meeting and do some fellowship with folks, you know. And this journey has really, it's been amazing where I keep finding people like one of the daily prayers that I've had is how can I serve someone else that's still suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, someone crosses path, and it's so cool. Even when I really don't want to help someone
Right.
else,
Right.
you
Yep.
know, it's
Careful what you
usually
pray
mostly
for.
then. Right, I get what I pray for,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'm learning through so much of about myself by working with others. I had no trust in other people for so long that I this has just been such a blessing to be able to put myself out there and ask people to trust me, and help lead them in the right direction, show
Mm-hmm.
them what works, and then also for them to help me grow. I see myself in everyone that I meet.
Well, I
you
love that
know
you're intentional in the mornings. This is this way of life. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. It's just not
hmm
easy sometimes. And there's a
right.
there's a big difference because there's especially with a child at home, there's always something that can get your attention where you don't have that intentional foundation laying time, to build your day on that you just described. But the life it affords you when you're intentional about your recovery, and as intentional as we were in our using, if we just applied that to our recovery, and this is something this is a way of life we get to do for the rest of our lives. I get to relate to people just like me. I get to be of service, and there is nothing like sitting with another human being and watching the light come on in their eyes. There's nothing like it. you know um
Right.
It's just, it's
Absolutely.
a beautiful thing.
It sure is. I agree. Um, and and it's so funny is it's a lot of folks when we get sober, we get on that that pink cloud of really wanting to be of service and how
Mm-hmm.
great everything the program's wonderful and I know all these things and I'm gonna go work and I want to do everything right away right now
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not shy of that when I first got sober and I definitely did not want to go work in recovery. Like that was the least, that was last on my agenda of career positions. And I met someone in the rooms who she would not leave me alone. Like, I think you'd be really great, working at my company and I think you'd be and she was a recruiter. Have this vibe where your energy's great. I think you'd fit in really well. And I'm like, oh, that's not for me. I don't want to work with people like me. I'm
Mm.
crazy.
But who better?
Right. But
Yeah.
who better?
Yeah.
I found out that this peer model, like you said, we get to work with others just like us. This peer model is the best thing out there.
Yeah,
Working.
we can't waste our hurts. We can't let all that we've been through just sit in a closet. We can't do that. We
No.
just can't and still expect to have a fulfilled life. So I'm so glad that you found that. How can people find you? Do you mind if people look you up on Facebook or anything or?
I mean, no, I don't mind. My name is Nicole Cramp, Kramp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I didn't. I know we kind of discussed briefly. I know. I knew you didn't practice individual anonymity as it was.
No, no, no. Yes. So that's my name, and yes, a lot of childhood trauma from that last name, um, alone.
I bet. I bet. I
uh,
bet.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Instagram is, I think it's just Nicole underscore cramp KRMB. Um, I love this life now, and I hope my message helps somebody, or at least is it the very least entertaining. This is my first time doing it, so don't mind the
No,
nerves.
you did.
Um,
You did great. And here's the deal. All we do, sister, is plant the seeds, and we just leave it to God to do what He's going to do with the results. So, whoever this is intended to reach, it'll reach them. But I'm so glad that you are sober and clean. I'm so glad that you have your son, and I'm so glad that I have a new sister in recovery. So stay in touch.
all right, we'll do.
All right, dear heart. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Purpose Driven Sobriety Podcast. Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.